In today's first segment, we welcome West Virginia Economic Development Secretary Mitch Carmichael, one of the main architects behind the development that has been a trademark of Governor Jim Justice's administration. Welcome, Mitch, and thanks for joining us. Let's jump right in and talk about the governor's most recent announcements on economic development.
Sounds great. It's great to be with you as well.
You know, the governor made a couple announcements there during his State of the State. Tell us a little bit about TCL Specialties and CM12 and how those deals came to be.
Well, TCL Specialties is a chemical company based in India that really had done a nationwide, frankly, a worldwide search for a location to create. This is, by the way, their first North American plant. They'd selected West Virginia of all the different options they had, and it's for a variety of reasons. The governor's done a great job in helping to recruit these companies, but also we have such a great portfolio of assets to offer these various companies. Our state is well positioned in terms of our friendly business climate, our workforce, our geographic location, and the propensity to work in this type of an industry, the chemical industry. So we have a sort of a muscle memory of doing those type things, and the company could not have been more thrilled with the manner in which we presented West Virginia to them and to their investors. Now, CM12 basically is what it's referred to, is a cyber technology entity that helps secure our nation's assets in terms of our information technology, our defense characteristics and so forth. And they're making a big investment in Clay County that will help facilitate training and the unique opportunities for instilling that type of a discipline in our armed services. Those were just two of the most recent announcements, and we've had a great year, as you know.
Absolutely. We'll get to that in a minute. Mitch, joining us today is Charles Young, WV News' senior reporter and legislative reporter. He's got a question about House Bill 2510. Charles, go ahead there.
Yeah, Mr. Secretary, so this is the Rare Earth Element and Critical Mineral Infrastructure Act. I heard the governor talk about the need for this a couple months ago when he was in the southern part of the state with the Omnis folks. Would you talk a little bit about the credits that this would extend and hopefully build this emerging industry?
Sure. As you know, the rare earth elements industry is critical to our national defense and our future prosperity in this country. West Virginia is very uniquely positioned in that we have lots of existing coal impoundments that are chock full of these incredibly valuable minerals that produce and are necessary to produce our computer technology, our cell phone technology, our battery technology for transportation and so forth. And we were trying to find ways to capitalize on the incredible opportunity that exists for those minerals in West Virginia. So the legislature has brought forth some bills that will extend tax credits and make it to where these companies that want to develop that mineral come here first and have an opportunity to be profitable. It also establishes the line of ownership, liability issues and so forth. It's funny, Charles, because when you look back on the history of those coal impoundments, for years it was, we don't own it, we don't want it, it's not ours, it's full of liability and so forth. Now everyone says, wait, it's worth something, it's mine. And so we needed to clarify the ownership transitions and so forth. But this is an industry that can really ignite West Virginia and attract not only for those rare earth elements, but for the downstream industries. That's where we're most focused in the development office to say, how can Apple, how can Google, how can these other entities utilize these materials? Because frankly, they're extracted in China now and other places that are not friendly to America. And we can do it in a safer, more environmentally friendly manner and benefit from the incredible jobs and opportunities that awaits West Virginians.
Are there other things you'd like to see the state do to, further the development of that industry?
Sure. I think, though, there are No, I will say it like this. The things that we're taking the steps on in that bill from last year and in this bill this year are setting us up. I think they need to be able to settle a little bit, establish a consistent regulatory environment so that we're not constantly changing the rules of the game. But businesses will, and we'll be reaching out to these businesses to come to West Virginia and develop these assets and locate the downstream industries here. So that's, Charles, it's a great question, but it also underscores the fact that West Virginia is in a great position right now for attracting and retaining great jobs. And this is just one industry that can really expound on our many advantages.
And then we wanted to ask, could you talk about, maybe pick a couple of the other pieces of legislation that your office is going to be following throughout the session? I know we've already got, over 1,000 bills introduced. There's a lot going on, but are there a few that have caught your all's interest?
Well, always we are interested in making sure that we have the funds available to compete with other states for the attraction of these great jobs. And I think, by any measure, those who would say the development office received, millions of dollars last year, we have put it to great use. And I think, as a former Senate president and someone who's been in the legislature quite some time, we always wanted to reward those who are doing well with the funds and, pull back from the programs that are not working. Our programs are working. We are well positioned. Some of the things that will help us become even more successful is the Site Development Fund and program that was brought forth last year, and it's being enhanced and funded this year. So that helps us. When these entities want to locate and we're able to close a deal and bring the advantages of West Virginia to the company, they say, fine, we're in, where can we locate? And we often have trouble placing them in in areas that are ready to go right now with water, sewer, infrastructure. So that's one that we're following very closely. And we're also very supportive of the governor's tax plan. We think that helps make West Virginia more competitive for our workforce and business attraction. So those are the things that we're really following. Always infrastructure, sites, and tax policy.
Before we went live, Mitch, we mentioned, it's been a whirlwind year for economic development in West Virginia. And you mentioned there recently that, we're well positioned. Let's talk about the new cores and the green power and things like that. I know Charles had a story recently that Green Power's initial testing of the electric buses went very well. They were expecting to ramp up production. I know Nucor's rolling along. Give us an update on some of those projects that we've announced over the past year.
Yeah, I'm so thankful that if you hadn't have asked that, I would have said it anyhow, because we are so proud of what's occurring in West Virginia. We began this year, or 2022, with the announcement of a Fortune 100 company, Nucor Steel, the largest investment they've made in their corporate history is occurring right here in West Virginia. The update on that progress or on that program and that company's development of the property, we always get, initially when we got that, when we landed that transaction, there were always the naysayers that said, all right, we've heard these announcements before, that's never going to come to fruition, and we had to beat back that, bad attitude. We are very careful when we make an announcement that we know it's going to happen and that there are performance clauses included in it. But Nucor, since the property has been acquired by them, they've also acquired additional tracts of land. They have already began their core drilling. Construction will start on 280 acres under one roof. They're going to put that much land under a roof to make the world's most advanced steel manufacturing plant for carbon neutral steel production. It's an incredible opportunity, and there'll be clusters of businesses that locate around Nucor. On that same day, as you know, we located a Green Power Motor Company, which is a futuristic electric school bus manufacturer that's going to produce their entire large school bus line in South Charleston, West Virginia. It's an incredible opportunity. Then Owens & Minor, a medical supply company, again, a Fortune 300 company located in Morgantown. We went through the year with all kinds of great announcements. Pure Watercraft, electric boat manufacturer, Omnis Sublimation Technologies, Omnis Building Technologies. We've done Commercial Metals Company, another big Fortune 500 steel company in the Eastern Panhandle. And then we landed Form Energy, which is the battery manufacturer that's going to Weirton, West Virginia, with 750 great jobs, in addition to TCL and CM12. And frankly, there were 29 companies that made the decision to locate in West Virginia this year. We attracted $6.5 billion worth of investment. Those are just numbers until you put them in context. That is, this past year, we did more in 1 year than the previous 4 years combined. And yesterday, I pulled up an article from South Carolina's development office, and they did a record-setting year, South Carolina, with $10 billion. And that's obviously more than we did, but when you look at it from where West Virginia has been to where we are now, we are light years ahead of the past, and we are so excited about the opportunities for West Virginia citizens. And let me just close with this point on regarding this question. It's important to us, not just for these numbers, but for the jobs that the people will be employed. Every job that we funded in our development office provides health care and a retirement package, or they don't get funding from us. These are life-changing opportunities for our citizens that can provide great middle-class homes, which is what we need in America. We need that middle class to rise up, and it also provides opportunities for, upper-scale incomes. But, like you and like many, I grew up in a very middle-class home with a steel worker as a father, and we love that life, and it provides great opportunities for our citizens. And so let us never take these opportunities for granted, and to know that it solves many of our healthcare problems, our drug problems, our education issues. A good job solves a lot of problems.
Absolutely. You mentioned your father, and you're from Jackson County, correct?
Yes.
And what about the Berkshire Hathaway investment there?
Yeah, the Berkshire Hathaway transaction, on Warren Buffett's 92nd birthday, he bought 2,100 acres in Jackson County. And it's the former Kaiser aluminum site. And my father worked on that site. And so it is the establishment of a microgrid energy sector. And what that means to Berkshire Hathaway and to the companies that are located there is that they can provide renewable or fossil-based energy within that microgrid without going through the PJM, national grid or regional grid, or through our Public Service Commission. So they have a lot of flexibility in the manner in which they deliver power, and as a result of that, one of Berkshire's companies, TiMet, it's a titanium manufacturing smelting operation, has also made the decision to locate on that property a commitment of over a $500 million investment, 200 great high-paying jobs, and will be the world's most advanced titanium smelting plant, the world's most advanced time, and it will go in aerospace products. So we are envisioning an aerospace corridor hub right there with Constellium aluminum that provides many of the great products for the aerospace industry. Now you have TiMet, and frankly, others are, the day we announced that, others were inquiring to our office about how they can get located on that site as well.
Mitch, we've talked about this past year, and I mean, are there a couple elements that help to flip the switch and open the door? I mean, what triggered this historic year? Yeah,
well, it's a great question. I feel very, well positioned to answer it, because over the last 4, 5, 6 years, the West Virginia Legislature, and I was a big component of it then, made enormous changes to our labor laws, our tax laws, our regulatory environments, and our education system. We always said those are the four pillars that if we get our policy right, the business community will come to West Virginia. We have every opportunity. We have the greatest assets to offer to the business community. They're realizing it now. And because those policies that are now in place are coming to fruition. And I won't leave without giving Governor Justice credit on this leadership. He always said you just needed a coach. And he's able to understand from a business perspective what these companies need. And now we have the policies into place from this legislature and previous legislatures that have positioned West Virginia to be competitive in that marketplace. And I feel like we've got a great team at the development office that knows how to market our assets to the world and to close these deals and to bring great world-class companies to West Virginia.
Well, Mitch, I tell you what, we really appreciate you giving us so much time today. Is there anything you'd like to add as a wrap-up?
Well, I just want to thank you and the people of West Virginia, everyone, for the commitment they've had to seeing that there is a new way of doing things in our state. There is opportunity, and we as a state can embrace the future and make it so much better than we've had over the last several years. You know, this state had probably the poorest per capita income in America. Now we have a per capita income in West Virginia that's rising faster than the national average. Our unemployment rate is at historic lows. All the things that we have marked as markers of success for our society are trending in the right direction. And because of that, we're excited about the future. And you know, I want people to look back on this moment and say they did all they could when they had the mantle in their hand to make this state the best it can be. And I think we're doing it, and I'm just pleased to be a part of it.
Well, Mitch, again, we want to thank you for your efforts. You know, you're a longtime legislator and now as the Economic Development Secretary. We applaud those efforts, and we thank you for joining us here on Legislature This Week. We'll take a short break and be back. Thank you very much.
Here's the better opportunity you're looking for. Enhancing health and wellness of our community, one patient at a time. Apply today at monhealth.com/careers. Choose Mon Health. Feel the difference.
Welcome back to Legislature This Week, brought to you by West Virginia News, the State Journal, and West Virginia Public Broadcasting. Legislature This Week is sponsored by Mon Health Systems, as well as SEVA WB and the West Virginia High Technology Consortium. Joining us now is Senator Ben Queen, a former delegate. Queen now represents Harrison, Lewis, Braxton, Clay, and parts of Gilmer County. Welcome, Ben, and thanks for joining us. Let's get things rolling with an update on your first week in the Senate.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. I think my previous 6 years in the House has allowed me to prepare for what I thought the Senate was going to be. So far, we have passed, I think, 28, 29 bills in week number one. That's something that is kind of unheard of on the House side. But things are going well. Excited to be a member of the Senate. I think we have a lot of work to do. We're already on day 7, so lots happening.
Ben, joining us today is our senior reporter and legislative reporter, Charles Young. Charles, I know you've got a few questions for Ben.
Hey, Ben, how are you this morning?
Hi, Charles. Good to see you.
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about, I know this is something you and I talked about a couple weeks ago, but could you talk a little bit about the shifting of your priorities since you've gone from representing just Harrison County to this larger area? It's much more rural district. There's a lot of, differentials in the unemployment rate across the district now. How does that shift your priorities and where you're focusing on your first Senate session?
Well, my legislative hat has changed, right? I just actually just walked out of a meeting with the Calhoun County superintendent and their staff, and it's a whole different realm. I think there's no secret that Harrison County and Calhoun County have very little in common, but I'm excited to take that challenge up, right? The addition of support staff in our kindergarten, first, second, and third grade classrooms means sometimes a lot more in that Calhoun County district than it does in Harrison County. I know Harrison County is still supportive of it, don't get me wrong, but I think the resources allocation, right? Calhoun County is an $8.5 million general revenue budget. Harrison County is much larger when it comes to operating 27 schools. So that legislative thought is something new for me, obviously, but I'm very excited to represent those counties.
Ben, we know everybody's talking tax cuts and tax plans, and it looks like the House is more in line with the governor, and there's been a little bit of back and forth between the Finance Committee yesterday and Secretary of Revenue David Hardy. What's your thoughts on it, and do you think we'll come to some type of an agreement on tax cuts for West Virginians this session?
Yeah, so I hear the bells going off today. The House will vote, and I expect will pass a 50% tax cut. Last night we had a rambunctious Finance Committee that lasted nearly 4 hours talking about these plans. I think the Senate wants to cut taxes. I think we're coming off of this Amendment 2 debate, right? What taxes can we cut? I think everybody in West Virginia, no matter what side of the aisle, you agree that some sort of a tax cut is in order. But I'll be honest, as the young guy in the room again, as the 27-year-old who plans on living here my entire life, I'm just not sure we can afford a $1.25 billion tax cut today. But I think we can afford a tax cut, right? Where does that go? In the House Delegates, we passed a 10% tax cut just last session, just 10 months ago. And we were, acclaimed as that was a very big move. So how do we make sure that we cut taxes where we want, right? We'll spend them, anybody down here will spend the money if it's sitting in a bank account. So we have to be cautious of overspending, but we've also got to be cautious. I'll be the guy in the room to say we've got to be cautious of cutting our income tax in half so soon. I think we've got to have a cautious approach, and my colleagues are kind of sick and tired of hearing me saying this. We're senators every year, right? In West Virginia, we come into session every year. If next year we can also afford a 10 or 12 or 16% tax cut, let's do that. Let's handle it year by year. I believe personally that there's the risk of trying to remove a 50% income tax in potentially 24 months is strong. But once again, we're talking. The governor's also proposed a car tax rebate plan. That's significant. We are we're passing PEIA legislation. All of this comes into fruition now when we talk about these tax bills, and we talk about one-time supplemental bills. It'll be introduced today, just in 15 minutes. Adding support staff to make sure our kids are reading by 3rd grade. That is a high priority, in my opinion. That's a high priority in several members of the Senate. We've just got to be careful that once we put our spending priorities in place, that we're also making sure that our tax cuts are reasonable and effective, right? Effective, you can ask anybody in this rotunda, effective can be 10%. Maybe effective is not until we do 100% tax cut, right? And I understand those debates, but I'm proud to be a member of the Senate Finance Committee. We're going to handle that and make that decision in the next couple of weeks.
So looking back on your House experiences, did you ever have a 4-hour committee meeting, or was that something thrust upon you this session?
So I really took pride in serving on the House Judiciary Committee under Mayor Capito for the last 5 years. So we had very long committee meetings. I think that the time I learned a lot in our Judiciary Committee process, so we spent a lot of time there. But my House colleagues on the Finance Committee did not spend as much time as what we're spending in the Senate Finance Committee. So luckily I have a great relationship with many of those members, and I've been, if anybody knows me, I try to give people a hard time and lighten things up around here because it's starting to get tense.
How, there's so much focus on the income tax, but I know that there's some other, you're a small business guy, and I know you pride yourself on that. You've been very successful with it. And are there other taxes that could be changed to help drive more small business?
Well, so we're still talking about this personal property tax cut, right? We're fresh off this Amendment 2 debate. Let me first say the voters voted down Amendment 2 because I believe that they did not want to affect the county's the county's funding stream, right? There's two different debates that I think we were having. Do we change the funding stream or do we cut taxes, right? I think everybody is still pro cutting taxes, but I think they were just worried, and the voters spoke very, very profoundly, that the opportunity to cut taxes in the manner that we proposed just wasn't feasible for the general public. And many counties, as we all know, came out against that. Now we're talking about these rebate plans. For car taxes, do we do the same thing for small business personal property tax? Do we do the same thing for these opportunities? Then that's all in discussion, right? I know small businesses who do pay $15,000 in this personal property tax. Well, if we come up with a rebate plan, which are still in discussions, and we don't know quite how we can do it. But if we discuss a rebate plan and we can rebate those taxes back, the counties remain whole, the counties remain their funding stream, but can we have the opportunity to cut those taxes for small businesses? I am in support of it, but it once again, that is a large fiscal note. We're talking about these tax plans in the hundreds of millions of dollars range. And no, I will say, hopefully I have other colleagues saying it, we can't afford to cut the personal property tax by 50%, cut your car tax, and cut the personal property tax for businesses. I mean, I think I'm sometimes might be in my own little reality world, but we've just got to be cautious. We can take a chunk out of the apple of all of them, and sometimes the impact might not be felt in one area or another, but I think our small businesses, they want to do business here. Many of them are under 25 employees. I think they're just asking to be on the same level playing field, because let's be honest, I have also been in support of our economic development activities. I think they're knocking it out of the park. We have thousands of jobs coming to West Virginia, high-paying jobs. Hopefully some of those will come to North Central West Virginia very soon. But we give them workarounds. We celebrate that, right? So it's awkward, to be the former small business chair in the House. It's awkward now to talk to our small business owners and realize that Nucor, while they employ thousands of employees, to get some of these workarounds from property tax. I think it's fair that we take a look at it. It's fair to be on the table, and I do believe it's on the table in the state Senate.
Ben, you tremendous insight for someone your age, will say. As an old timer, I can say that, but 27 years old, you've got a strong business sense, and we applaud you for that. I think that West Virginia News has long supported some type of approach that rewards the citizens and the businesses of West Virginia, as well as seeds future growth. And we just had Mitch Carmichael on, and he talked about everything being aligned for this future growth, even more growth maybe than what we've seen in the past year. It's been a historic year for economic development in West Virginia. Do you have that same optimistic viewpoint? Do you think we're poised for even more growth in West Virginia? And if not, what do we need to do to get it there?
I think West Virginia has the opportunity to build more wealth than any state in the country. I think we have an opportunity to be an all-above energy state. We're about to pass a bill in our economic development to welcome more, and it's a permitting bill for our natural gas power plants. And I think it's an opportunity to build as much opportunities for West Virginia as possible. The economic development team is knocking it out of the park. I will say, I think it's fair to bring this point up that, my first year in the House Delegates, we gave Commerce, $3, $4, $5 million. And this legislature, over the course of many years, has doubled down on the fact that, hey, can we beef up our Commerce Department and go ask the rest of the world to come do business in West Virginia? I was at dinner last night with a manufacturer trying to bring 250 jobs in year one to West Virginia. Now, I understand. I want them to come to my district, and I'd love them to fill jobs in my district, but I also put my state hat on and realize a rising tide lifts all ships, and I think we have a real shot at attracting these businesses because they want to come do business in West Virginia. We have a manufacturing spirit. We have an industrial spirit. Nobody can work harder than the folks in West Virginia, and I think what we can do moving forward when it comes to surpluses, we have to make sure that we have a steady hand on the wheel so that when a bad time does come, that we are not in the position to have to raise taxes on anyone, right? We're also going to pass a one-time bonus check for our state retired educators over 70 years old, just today in pensions, 2 o'clock, $1,500 one-time bonus. These are awesome things. These are things to be proud of. These are things that none of us talked about the last 6 years, having the opportunity to do them. So I think it's. I tell a lot of folks around the district, it is easier, and my friends are now spread across the country. That's why I ran for office, to try to get them home. My friends, I think it's easier today. This is the first time I can say this in 2023. It's easier today for a 27-year-old to move to West Virginia. I believe that, and we have to continue to develop these job opportunities. My friends are now realizing, I know many millennials are, it is really awesome to raise your kids in West Virginia in a small education environment where your kids know everybody, where the parents know everybody, where you're more worried about, you're supportive of your kids and your classes, and I think that's very important. I know my friends. I can report to you if anybody cares about my friends in North Carolina and Texas, Denver, Chicago. They're now seriously considering looking at buying a house and back at home, and that I feel like we're doing something.
Well, that's great to hear. We also you've got a little personal news here. I think has all this great economic news made it easier for you to decide to tie the knot in, or what?
Well, I am 10 days engaged. I think being able to spend time in the legislature the last 10 days has allowed my new fiance Meredith to. I think we're scheduling things pretty quickly. I'm excited for that, and I'll tell you, the easiest discussion that I've had. Man, I'm going to get emotional. The easiest decision that I have is being able to raise a family here, and I think that I hope that discussion allows everyone in West Virginia to see the opportunities we have and be proud of where you're coming from. So, not to get emotional, but I'm known for doing that. So, yes, thank you. I'm very excited. 2023 will be a big year.
Well, congratulations, and I didn't mean to catch
No,
you
you're good
with that, but
no, I appreciate it.
Hey,
Congrats,
one last question, unless Charles has something, but you're relatively young, and some people look at that as a detriment, but I look at it as somebody, so I want to ask you about the education system in West Virginia. We hear it demonized sometimes, but you came through that system. You came through the public school system. You went to WVU. Is the education system a lot better off than maybe what we even realize it sometimes?
Yeah, I think we sometimes have talked about the school choice measures in West Virginia, and I think those have provided parents options. But as someone who is proud of the education system that I received, someone who plans on educating my child in a public education system, I think what needs to happen in our public education system is to make, I know people are tired of me harping on this, but to make sure that our kids under the age of 8 are equipped with every resource that they can have, right? We have 120,000 students who are about to go through our early education system. And we have a lot of vulnerable students. We have a lot of students who are going to depend on the public education system in the next 8 years of their life. And I think today we have an opportunity to provide as much resources to those kids under the age of 3 or under the age of 8 to make sure that they're reading at the grade level. You spend up to 3rd grade learn how to read, and for the rest of your life you're reading to learn. And if we don't get that right, we're not doing our kids justice. And I think we have an opportunity to improve our public education where needed, but to support them at all costs. And I'm so excited that both sides of the chamber are now heavy focused on public education. Yes, did we pass school choice measures? Did we pass the Hope Scholarship? I have Notre Dame High School. They are rewarding the fact that private education is just this much more affordable. But public education system, that is our number one priority down here. And I'm so excited to see the opportunities for young parents to believe in our public education system. So when it's time for pre-K and kindergarten, they're going to choose the public education system and be proud of it. I think it's very important to have cultures in West Virginia where you're proud of the education system. I can tell you that my hometown in Harrison County, people are moving to Harrison County because of the education system. right? That's what's driving prices of houses. That's what's driving opportunities for jobs. These employers are looking at the public education system. I think that's something that we don't really talk about too much, but employers want the trust that our education system is going to be right for the employees that they bring in. I think you're going to see a lot of investment over the next 50, how many days left do we have? 53? And I'm looking forward to that.
Ben, anything else you'd like to add to wrap up?
No, I've gone through the whims of emotion, so thanks for having me. Please, I will put a little selfish plug. We're in the legislature for the next 53 days. If folks back home, please reach out to your legislators. You don't have to come visit. We're sitting in the rotunda. I'd love for everyone to come visit, but please stay in touch. We many legislators on both sides of the aisle down here want to make sure that we're getting as much input from home as possible.
Well, Ben, we thank you for your time here and for your service to the greater state of West Virginia. Senator Ben Queen here at West Virginia Legislature This Week, and we'll be right back after this message.
Your heart is in the best hands. Mon Health Heart and Vascular is the highest ranked cardiovascular program in the state of West Virginia by the American College of Cardiology. Choose Mon Health. Feel the difference.
Welcome back to Legislature This Week, brought to you by West Virginia News, the State Journal, and West Virginia Public Broadcasting, and sponsored by Mon Health Systems, SEVA West Virginia, and the West Virginia High Technology Consortium. Joining us now is West Virginia Attorney General Patrick Morrisey, fresh off a major announcement he made today in regards to opioid litigation. Patrick, why don't you give us the update on this big announcement?
Well, big news today. We just announced that we secured an additional $83 million from Walgreens as part of our broad opioid litigation. We've now signed the settlement agreement and we've sent it out to the political subdivisions to be ratified. Every single time we've been able to make these recommendations, I'm really pleased to say all the political subdivisions have said yes. All of the counties and all of the municipalities. I want to commend a lot of the people that have represented the counties and cities and the cooperative spirit that we've had. By working as a team and working as one voice, we've made a big difference for West Virginia. One of the biggest impacts of this announcement, I think it's pretty clear, we're going to go over $1 billion in total recoveries. West Virginia will be #1 in the nation per capita settlements, and a lot of people disagreed with the strategies up front of what we were doing, but we had a plan. We've executed on that plan. I think now it's going to mean really big things for West Virginia, positive things, where I think that we're going to help get people better in the head and heart.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you hope that the governing bodies are able to do with this funding?
Absolutely. So I've always believed that when you're attacking the opioid epidemic, you go after it from a supply side, a demand side, and an educational side. There's no easy, quick fix to addressing the opioid epidemic. And West Virginia has a number of areas that I think it could benefit from additional investment and infrastructure. Obviously, you have to start with prevention and education up front because you're trying to avoid having people get hooked on these substances in the first place. But there's also a whole continuum that needs to get addressed from the time not only before people take drugs, but at the place where they get intoxicated and having a detox system, and then going all through the process to get not only the inpatient hospital services that you may need, but the mental health services that are critical, the job replacement, and then of course you have to also focus on the enforcement side of the ledger as well. I think it takes everything. A lot of times people say, well, let's just throw the book at them, or then they'll say, let's only do treatment or only prevention. No, I think it's in all of the above. And so what's going to happen is the way the money's going to get dispersed, it'll be 24.5% that goes directly to the counties and cities, and they had wanted that because a lot of these counties and cities have been providing a lot of outlays to fight the drug epidemic. And then we have about 73% focused on this foundation, which is designed to really be thoughtful. We'll be doing needs assessments in all of the regions of the state so that if one region has a bevy of treatment centers already, you won't just throw another one on. You're going to do it on the basis of need. I think that's really critical. So this system, the way the money hopefully will be spent. And that's not going to be controlled by my office, be controlled by a governing board consisting of appointees from the regions and also the governor. When that comes together, I'm hopeful it's going to be one of the best models in the nation. It's a little bit different than some of the other ones, but we're trying to maximize the amount of lead that we put on the target to get people better in the head and heart.
Patrick, joining us today too is Charles Young, our senior reporter covering legislative issues. I know he's got a couple questions in regard to fentanyl.
Sure.
Go ahead, Charles.
Yes, sir. So a couple of things that caught my eye during your budget presentation before the House the other day about your fentanyl initiative. So the first one I want to ask you about is, your office being supportive of fentanyl being classified as a weapon of mass destruction. Could you talk about the utility of doing that? I mean, everyone knows
Absolutely.
fentanyl is dangerous. Why would we need to classify it further?
Well, a couple different reasons. I think when you classify it as a weapon of mass destruction, then additional resources from the federal government flows. It basically becomes a higher priority. One of the concerns I've had with respect to the fentanyl epidemic is just not gotten the attention that it deserves. That's why you've seen me not only focus on the Homeland Security Department. We have had pending litigation against Mayorkas, and we've been pushing them to tighten the borders because we know either between the ports of entry, at the ports of entry, too much product is flowing in. We've also asked Merrick Garland to dramatically prioritize going after fentanyl and increase the number of prosecutions. I think we have some good U.S. attorneys here in West Virginia. They're trying to do the right thing. They need more help from Washington, and we do that. That makes a difference. And this classification, I've been working with my other attorneys general about it. We've believed that if you can get the additional work, it gets in DOJ, it gets in foreign policy, it gets in the U.S. Department of Justice. All of those are critical because even, for instance, from a foreign policy perspective, we need Anthony Blinken to be working with China to stop the source, and that's where the base ingredients flow, then to the Mexican drug cartels where they're packaged, things come together, and then they're shipped across the border. We need everyone focused on it, and I think a designation as a weapon of mass destruction could make a big difference. That's why I'm pushing for it, and I'm going to keep pushing for this and many other initiatives because fentanyl is slaughtering our citizens. You should also be on the lookout for some other collaborative work between my office and other AGs. I've been talking with a lot of my colleagues about other investigations and things we can do to go after the root causes, the financial network that's in place. Because anytime you have illicit drug trafficking, there's a money trail that needs to be followed, and I think that the states are looking to do some of the work the feds have failed to do.
Sure, and one of the other things you mentioned in that same presentation was also, being supportive of the death penalty for dealers under certain circumstances. Could you describe that?
Look, I've always been supportive of the death penalty, in particular when you have the mens rea, when you know what you're doing, and for first-degree murder. I think that the theory of just desserts makes that the correct decision. And so I know that we haven't had the death penalty in West Virginia for a long time, but I've been supportive of that. And of course, I think when you're talking about fentanyl, when you're distributing at such a large level, there's going to be a knowledge that there'll be a lot of people who are dying. So it's going to be harder to prove in these situations where the dealer is a couple levels removed from when the product is actually used. But I do think we should be looking at stiffening up some penalties and really engaging a lot more deterrence for a lot of these people that are poisoning our kids. I don't need to tell anyone today, fentanyl is the #1 cause of death between those of the ages of 18 and 46. We need to take some dramatic action. That's why I keep talking about this.
With the legislature currently going on in the state, Patrick, is there any legislation that's targeting any of these concerns on the drug trade? Or are there any other legislation that you have your eye on?
Yeah, a couple things. First, we have been talking with the legislature about ratifying different components of the West Virginia First Memorandum of Understanding. That's the landmark agreement between my office and every one of the counties and all but about 8 of the municipalities. So we're trying to get that affirmed. We know that the court just 2 weeks ago approved officially the West Virginia MOU. That's positive, but there's a role for the legislature to play. So I'm hopeful that they're going to move that forward this session. I've already had a lot of meetings on that topic. I've briefed the governor. I am hopeful we can get that through because that's going to help allow the money to start to flow, and that makes a big difference. So that's one piece, very important for our office that we're working on. But look, I want to continue to draw more attention to this fentanyl menace as well. You may know that just a few weeks before Christmas, we brought 8 families together, and each of these families had a loved one that died from fentanyl. And these are sons and daughters and people that had no expectation at all that fentanyl was going to be mixed on top of cocaine or other products. And you take one pill, you have one little piece of it, and you die almost immediately. Very scary stuff. We have to draw more attention to that. I think stiffening up the penalties is good, but also ensuring that there are adequate resources on the federal level, but also on the state level as well. That's where I think our West Virginia First MOU makes a difference as well, because enforcement is part of that.
Is there more that the education system could be doing to get the word out? Because a lot of these people are relatively young when they start to get involved with drugs, and then it escalates, and then, like you said, one pill and it can be over.
I think that there does need to be more on the educational side, and that's why many years ago we were the first office to work with the legislature to encourage them to introduce curriculum in the school, focusing on substance abuse. But it's just a little bit. I think that they're barely getting any course load education. People might come in for a day. It needs to be more pronounced. One of the things that I've been doing is I've been getting out to a lot of the schools and talking with them, and also explaining what happens when people are vaping, that sometimes fentanyl is getting in the middle of the vaping and you could die really, really quickly. And I point out the example of some of the batches that have come through where people thought they were vaping or they thought they were getting another product, and it was fentanyl, and snap, they died. And different types of people all died from that. There was a big story coming out of New York that folks may remember. We had a lawyer, you had a social worker, you had some other people, and all different walks of life, but fentanyl somehow got mixed in and they all died, and everyone needs to be educated about that. The schools have to be ground zero. That's how you stop having another generation fall prey to senseless death.
Well, Patrick, one thing we were wondering, and I know many in West Virginia are wondering about what your future plans are. And, you've been the Attorney General, and you've done a great job on many fronts. But what's the future hold for Patrick Morrisey in the state of West Virginia?
Well, the first thing I would note is that it's been the honor and privilege of my life to serve as the West Virginia Attorney General. And as many people listening know, whether you love all the things I do or not, we like to rack them up. We like to get big things done. And I go to work every day, and all my worst critics never say, what the heck is Morrisey doing? No, they know every day we're fighting the drug front. We're taking on federal overreach. We're successfully defending a lot of the laws that are passed by the legislature. I would argue, if you look at any of the potential people in the field, in any of the races, we have the best record by far of protecting West Virginians and really ensuring that West Virginia is going to be able to successfully move into the future and become even more vibrant. We're going to run on that record because I think it is very, very strong, but you have to also combine it with the vision of what you're trying to achieve for the state. I like what some are trying to do with the dramatic cuts in taxes on the income tax. We have to distinguish ourselves from the other states that we touch so we can be more competitive. Obviously, I'm trying to do a ton of work on the workforce side with the opioid monies. I think that could make a big difference as well. And obviously investments in infrastructure, broadband, and successfully trying to help move our educational system numbers up. So I'm working on all that. To answer your direct question, I think you're going to start to hear something in the next few weeks. I will say I've tried to finish up a lot of our work. I know that we have one more case pending in the opioid litigation. We're down to one. We're going to cross $1 billion. I've tried to get it to the place where the office is left in a much better place than it was left to me. It was not left in a particularly good place when I took over back in 2013. I want to make sure that people know we had a really good run in the AG's office. But please hold the line, wait. In the next few weeks, you're going to start to hear more and more. And I think people are going to be very pleased because when we come, we're going to come with a bang. And we're going to be able to help West Virginia get to a place that it's not been before. And I'm excited about that because that's what gets me juiced up every day. Work hard, fight, and win for West Virginia. And we could use that whether I end up running for governor or Senate or Conservation District Supervisor of Jefferson County. You never know.
Okay, that's definitely not on my bingo card for you, okay, the Conservation Supervisor. Patrick, anything else you'd like to add to wrap up? We really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule, and it's been a big day, and that $1 billion return to West Virginia is something to hang your hat on.
Look, I think it has, and we've had the right strategy on all these issues, whether you're talking about opioids. It's not just the settlement money. It's no one has ever heard of an agreement between the state and every county and all the municipalities. West Virginia VPA, one of the biggest separation of powers cases that we led. We're getting ready to lead on the Waters United States rule, pushing back against Biden overreach. We've got a Second Amendment case that we're looking to advance against the Biden pistol brace. So we're keeping busy and we're going to keep charging every day. I'm really appreciative that you guys are taking the time to give your listeners the ability to know what's going on in the AG's office. There's a lot more good stuff to come. And I'm hopeful that we'll have some good news to share with you in upcoming weeks.
Well, I'll tell you what, Patrick, we appreciate your service to the state, and we appreciate you joining us here on Legislature This Week. We're going to take a pause for a few brief messages, and we'll be back with you. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Here's the better opportunity you're looking for. Enhancing health and wellness of our community, one patient at a time. Apply today at monhealth.com/careers. Choose Mon Health. Feel the difference.
Joining us to wrap up this first edition of Legislature This Week is veteran State House reporter Randy Yohe of West Virginia Public Broadcasting. Welcome, Randy. So it's been a pretty wild first few days. Let's talk taxes.
Well, the Democrats made a proposal this morning right before the House session. They're right behind me debating the tax bill right now. But the Democrats have come out and proposed a 100% tax cut, zero taxes, for West Virginians earning $80,000 and less. They say that 72% of taxpayers in the country would pay zero income tax. They talked about how they felt that would be more equitable across the board for the rich and poor. And so Larry Rowe, delegate out of Kanawha County, has just presented that. He's taking questions right now, and it's all under debate, as this is in third reading now, and they'll vote on that today, I imagine, and then send it over to the Senate.
What are you hearing out of the Senate? I know there was a pretty contentious 4-hour Senate Finance Committee meeting yesterday with Dave Hardy testifying. What's it sounding like over in the Senate?
Dave Hardy and Senator Rupi Phillips, they went at it toe to toe. I mean, there was comments like, where's the pixie dust that we're going to find any of this money with and such, and it's contentious. I think that the Senate, I talked to Speaker Hanshaw yesterday, and he was cautiously optimistic. He said that the Senate and the House are talking every single day about taxes. Now, there's a number of senators that have a lot of concerns right now with being able to pay for state expenses, a laundry list of state expenses that they talked about in that committee hearing, when they're losing 25% of the budget, which comes from that personal income tax. So I think we need to be prepared to see a Senate version of what their strategic tax plan is, which I'm not sure what that's going to be. But back to Speaker Hanshaw, he's cautiously optimistic there that this may go through with personal income tax cuts.
Charles, I know Ben was talking earlier about maybe seeing some reductions in the amount, maybe not 30% and 50% over 2 years, maybe something lesser. Are you hearing anything along those lines? And Randy, you too, are you hearing anything about less of an income tax cut?
Yes, what I have been hearing was, like Ben said, that there are, multiple plans, in the air right now, several of which involve, as he put it, taking smaller bites of the apple instead of these big round figures like 50%, 100%, going back to what was approved in the House a couple of years ago, a 10% decrease.
Randy, what are you thinking? Sorry.
Yeah, pretty much the same thing as Charles is talking about. I'm sure there's a number of variations there. It all depends on how they'll hammer it out at the end.
What about the personal property? Amendment 2 got shot down pretty strongly, but there's some discussion about maybe some personal property rebates. Have you heard anything along those lines?
The word rebate has popped out quite a bit. I know that, Finance Chairman Tarr with the Senate and President Blair are still blistering from their loss of Amendment 2 and a personal beef with the governor on being slighted and disparaged, if you will, by calling them corrupt and the swamp. And I tell you, Blair still hasn't gotten over it at all, I asked him how they're going to bury the hatchet one time, and he said, "Who are you going to bury it in?" And I've never used that on the air, but I mean, I have that on tape. So it's still very contentious between the governor and the Senate, in my opinion, from what Blair says. And they don't want to lose that whole idea of business and property tax reduction. Rebate, I mean, we heard about the governor talking about that vehicle tax rebate, and the whole mechanism to do that is a mess, if I understand. It would be very difficult and messy, for lack of a better word. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of proposals that the Senate comes out with.
I know a lot of discussion. I think Dale Lee with the Education Association came out and made some statements that any kind of tax cut would hurt education. I know that the teachers unions and educators and the public have a concern about teachers' pay, and the teachers and educators and state employees really have a big concern about PEIA. Are you hearing anything along teachers' pay or PEIA developing?
Well, I mean, after the governor in the State of the State, talking about the 5% raise for state employees and especially teachers, no, I'm not hearing anything more specific. Charles, you might know something.
No, I'm right there with you, Randy. I haven't heard anything more specific beyond that. I mean, lots of discussion of it. I think there's lots of concerns about, the looming budget crisis with PEIA. So.
I think if we could shift gears a little bit, what everybody seems to be on the same sheet of music on is early childhood education reforms. The governor's office, the Senate, and the House, especially the first and third graders, and what Hanshaw's been pushing for a couple of years. The governor's going to put, $37 million into first grade teachers' aides. The Superintendent Roach has a solid plan in there. I think that the Senate and House bills on this subject are all going to travel through without a whole lot of changes. And then Hanshaw explained to me yesterday that all the data shows that it's solid, that if you can improve basic reading, math, and science skills in first, second, and third graders, when they get to 11th, 12th grade, they're going to be better off, ready to graduate, maybe go to secondary school, whatever the case may be, advancement. And I think everybody's on the same sheet of music with that.
So you think we'll see teachers' aides in the lower grades then?
Excuse me?
You think we'll end up seeing teachers' aides approved
for
first grade?
I really do. I really do. I don't see anybody that's pushing against that at all.
Have you heard have there been any updates, any discussions down there in the hallways about locality pay? I know that was a big issue when it came to corrections, especially in the Eastern Panhandle. And I know corrections has drawn a lot of interim discussions, but I don't know if anything's been put forth so far this session to address it. Have you heard anything along the lines of corrections and locality pay?
Yes, with the Eastern Panhandle as the poster child, if you will, we're seeing, for lack of a better term, with DHHR, with CPS workers, with corrections, there in the Eastern Panhandle where they're having such competitive border clashes with workers going to Pennsylvania or Maryland or Virginia. President Blair has pushed hard on that, and I believe there's some bills that'll include that. And there's other pockets of the state where locality pay would help, would work out, would be competitive. And the concern, of course, always has been, what about the rest of the workers in there? You know, what are they going to do when somebody's making X amount of dollars more than them in another part of the state? But I think that may have some legs.
I know it was also discussed with DHHR and some other, it's been discussed with teachers as well about how easy it is for Eastern Panhandle and Northern Panhandle teachers to step across the state lines and make a lot more in Pennsylvania or Maryland or Ohio, as the case may be, when it comes to education. So there's some definite concerns there. Any other issues on the front burners down there, Randy?
Well, there's a couple of them that aren't talked about too much, I think are interesting. Speaker Hanshaw and Commerce Secretary James Bailey both want to do some new things with the forestry industry. You know, we're one of the top forestry states in the country still. We got a lot of hills and they still got a lot of trees. And they'd like to see some furniture made, like it was here 80, 100, 120 years ago, you know, and see if we can use some of our timber to get into the competitive furniture industry. You know, you always hear about North Carolina, you know, cracking out the hickory or whatever the name of the company is called. I know that there's some thought in there and legislation, but discussion between the House Speaker and the Commerce Department and Forestry Department to really ramp up forestry and make it a very viable industry in West Virginia. There's one.
I know, you know, West Virginia Public Broadcasting was, you know, on the leading edge of some of the early reporting on DHHR. I know that, you know, obviously there's been some bills introduced. Last year it was, hey, let's break it into 2. This year it's, hey, let's break it into 3 agencies. What are you hearing along those lines, and what do you think will come out of it?
Well, when you look at the 2 different bills, they're not that different from the House and Senate. It does break down to the 3 agencies. There's some semantics on what department will be under this division, but the breakup is consistent here in the Capitol building. Now downstairs in the governor's office, my gut tells me that they're starting to listen. They're starting to come around. You heard that tone in his voice in the State of the State address, that we're here to listen. You know, we're going to put our headphones on like I have right now, and we're going to listen to all concerns, and you want us to listen to our concerns as well. Will he come out and say, all right, we're going to put the auspices of the McChrystal report into place, and that's going to help us internally with communications and break down the siloing and the other things that he talked about. But do we need to take the bigger picture in and divide this into 3 agencies and try to boost efficiency in that way as well, once we got our internal communications things from the McChrystal report challenged? So basically, from what I'm hearing here and there, and Charles, you may agree or disagree, but I think that the governor may come around, and I think this 3-way split may happen.
Well, I think the other thing to keep in mind is, you know, that the legislature and the GOP has the numbers to do whatever they want with little consideration for the governor's input to it. So I think they can push that plan through if that's what they really want to do.
I mean, if you remember, they pushed it through last year. It got passed, and the governor vetoed it. So I think it'll get to his desk again, and I think it's a 50-50 now, maybe even 40-60, whether he'll veto that or not.
One question I have, and one thing we've urged through our editorials, is do you think the lawmakers are listening to, you know, those 3 guys that the governor appointed have a pretty impressive resume for success here in West Virginia? Jeff Coben from WVU, Dr. Clay Marsh, you know, who we have the utmost respect for, and retired Major General and now Vice President at WVU, James Foyer, you know, have been designated as people that will be helping to change DHHR's culture. Do you think lawmakers are giving them attention?
I haven't heard any disparaging remarks whatsoever. I haven't heard. It hasn't really been discussed in general session here in the hallways or in committees, really. So I suppose that's an affirmation in a way. As we get farther along in talking about making sure that health issues are taken care of, you know, with Senator Baldwin gone and with some of the people that really champion the cause for foster care reform not here anymore, we're not hearing about that specific aspect as much as we have the last 2-3 years of the legislature. But as I said, I haven't heard any disparaging remarks. You see that Coben came in and boom, they started just doing changes right away. Maybe not huge changes, and changes in locality issues in the Eastern Panhandle again. But I think that the jury's still out on how the legislature not feels, but is acclimating to them.
Well, Randy, I tell you what, we appreciate you joining us here to wrap up this first segment. And we know that West Virginia Public Broadcasting is a leading source for state legislative coverage. You guys have a program every night, right? You're involved with that. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, I am. The Legislature Today airs Monday through Friday every evening at 6 p.m. And you can get it on television, on your radio, and online at wvpublic.org. It's the Legislature Today. It's the wrap-up of the day's events. We've got the newsmakers on, and it's an everyday show that's going to last throughout the legislative session.
Well, we want to thank Randy and Charles for joining us. Also want to thank Mitch Carmichael, who was with us earlier, Senator Ben Queen, and Attorney General Patrick Morrisey. West Virginia Legislature This Week is brought to you by West Virginia News, the State Journal, and West Virginia Public Broadcasting. It is sponsored by Mon Health Systems, as well as SIVA WV and the West Virginia High Technology Consortium. Join us next week, and until then, make sure you catch West Virginia Public Broadcasting's Legislature Today every night, Monday through Friday. Hey, until then, have a good week, and let's keep West Virginia moving forward.
Here's the better opportunity you're looking for. Enhancing health and wellness of our community, one patient at a time. Apply today at monhealth.com/careers. Choose Mon Health. Feel the difference.